Some glaze colors will simply darken and some become glossy, while others completely change hues because they do react to the temperature in the kiln, as I said. So you won't always get what you expect things to be. I have some examples of some stuff up here that are really kind of fun, things that can go well and things that don't go so well. This is a particular piece that didn't go so well. You can see in spaces here where the student did not apply a very thick or heavy coat of glaze, and it really just kind of ran, and you can't really see the glaze at all in some spots. Inside here, you can definitely see the brush strokes because that's really only one coat of glaze, and so there's not a lot there that's gonna show up. It's pretty much the same all the way around here. I don't know if they were in a hurry, or they just didn't really want to bother too much, or they were looking for kind of a, I don't know, industrial sort of beat up look. That could be the case. Maybe this was intentional, I don't know. In this one, I don't think it was intentional because on the outside they did a great job. There's a lot of different colors here. There are a lot of different effects in here and lots of good use of the glaze. But on the inside, it's very thin. Maybe they weren't too concerned about the inside, which is often the case, and they just wanted to get a little bit of color in there. On the outside as well, there's a very heavy coat of yellow on the outside, which worked very well for them. So they may have just not cared too much about the inside, but they clearly knew what they were doing with the outside. With this one, you've got a nice use of texture. They used a mat that has kind of a wood grain texture to it, and then they gave it excuse me, one color, a brown coat, but you can still see the wood texture. And if they had done this a little more heavily, I think that you probably would have gotten a lot more color variation where the texture shows up. Then on the inside they used a different color, and they put it pretty hard because they cared about what the inside of their box looked like. Now, I said that we do have a lot of different colors, and this is a great example of that. Here is a lovely cat's head on top of a birthday cake, but you can see all the different sprinkle colors on here, the different colors on the cat's whiskers, the different colors here, but again, no glaze on the bottom. Make sure you never have anything on the bottom, otherwise they would never have seen this again. Now, the pieces I've just shown you are pieces that are, excuse me, have been completely glazed and fired. I do have a couple pieces here that have been glazed but not fired yet. And so you can see the difference here. This has been glazed, so it has the color on it, but it's painted, well, it's glazed, but it's also dried, and it has none of that luster or none of that sheen that you would get when it comes out of the kiln, because that, again, is the difference between paint and glaze. If this were simply paint, that's basically what you would get, would be this very matte or flat finish. When this comes out of the kiln, it's going to be much more glossy and much shinier. I would say the same thing about this one. You've got a very plain matte finish. I'm not even sure what color this one's going to be when it comes out, but they've got several colors in here. And that yellow on the inside. But again, when it comes out of the kiln, it's going to be shiny and very glossy because that's how they work. And that's how people like them. So when we talk about types of glazed colors, the first one are gloss colors, and these are the ones that become very shiny and they become very slick after being fired. Those are the ones I've been showing you, and those are the ones that are the most popular because people really like the bright colors and they tend to like the real shiny things. I know I do in a lot of my things. Then for the next type of color, you have a matte color, and that really is basically this finish. We do have some glazes that come out with that very flat finish, and some people really do like those. They're not as shiny, they're not as, they don't glisten and reflect the light the way that a lot of the other glazes do, especially the glossy ones, and they're good for some things. Actually, this one looks to be one of the matte finish glazes, and you can see the difference between the interior here and how flat it is as opposed to these shiny colors on the outside. So some people like those for certain things. I like them for some things. You can get transparent glazes that provide you with a little bit of color, but they're still pretty see-through. You generally would put one of those on top of another glaze. It'll add some color to it. And then finally we have opaque glazes, and they're very solid and they're very hard to see through. if you look at a piece like, well, actually this one, this is an opaque glaze. It's very thick, it's dark, you can't really see through it. It wouldn't do you much good to put another glaze underneath it. Unlike paints, you can't mix glazes together. They don't do well together simply because of those chemical interactions that take place under that heat. 1200 degrees is very, very hot, and a lot of things go on with the glazes once they're in the kiln, and things change dramatically. So you can't really mix the glazes, but you can layer them. For instance, with my little piece here, I could, if I wanted to, take some, well, let's see. This would be an interesting thing to try. As I told you, this clear glaze is really green when it goes on. But what I could do is, since I've got one coat of yellow on here, I could put a couple coats of the clear glaze on top. And this is where the unpredictability and the surprise would come from, because this goes on very, very green. But when it comes out of the kiln, it's going to be clear. But it's also now going to be interacting with that yellow underneath it, which is already dried. And I will see something go on after that. Now, after this, I'm going to have to put some more clear on top to make sure that I get a good coating on this. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when these two interact with one another in the kiln. And as I said, and I guess that brings me to number 5, layering glazes is a great way to combine colors, but sometimes the outcome may be unpredictable. And that's one of the things that I love about this, as I've been saying. The last thing, all the glazes we use in our ceramics class are non-toxic. And that is the case for all of our glazes, but it's not the case for all glazes. There are some glazes that are somewhat toxic. There are some glazes that are not food safe. You can't really use them for a cup or a bowl or a plate or anything like that. You can't eat off of them, but they can be very, very pretty all the same. We've seen, and I don't know if Ms. Singleton's class has seen any raku yet, but if you do any kind of raku firing, that's not really food safe either because of all the carbonization that happens with the clay once it comes out of the raku firing. So that's not so much about the glaze itself, but it is about toxicity. But again, these are all safe for food, and they're non-toxic, and so you don't have to worry about getting anything on your skin, or you don't have to worry about eating off of anything. So if you did want to make some kind of a coffee cup for someone or anything like that, you'd be fine with that. So I think that covers pretty much everything that we have going on with our glaze today. So that is section number 14 on glazing, and I will see you all soon.